own adventure with family and friends, and you might just see this. Your moment's out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours. We're having a discussion today about GMO. This is Ellen Kamhi, host of Herbally Yours, and you can always reach me at naturalnurse.com. You can also come out with us in the field. We do herb walks all over the place, including many on Long Island, where we actually go outside, gather wild plants, and make them into your own medicine. And I know they were doing an article, just got interviewed by Newsday magazine, about the American Herbalist Guild. And the American Herbalist Guild is a national organization, and we have a chapter here on Long Island, which is the American Herbalist Guild Long Island. And it is 100% free and open to the public. And we have monthly meetings at the Oyster Bay Library and also in Seacliff. And we discuss all things herbal. So, including our show today, Herbally Yours. And on our show today, Herbally Yours, we're talking about genetically modified organisms, GMO. Now, in terms of the labeling law, we mentioned that earlier on in the show. And what is the GMO labeling law? What is the law? Most people think, oh, it has to be labeled. Well, we wish it did. And as a matter of fact, Vermont did pass a labeling law back in 2016, which was about to go into effect in July of 2016. And right when that happened, the Congress passed a mandatory labeling law, which is called Subtitle E, National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard. And this is what it says. Bioengineering, the term bioengineering and any similar term as determined by the Secretary with respect to a food refers to a food that contains genetic material that has been modified through in vitro recombinant deoxyribonucleic acid techniques. Okay. Short form of that is DNA. Perhaps you've heard of DNA. So what it's doing is this labeling law, which, by the way, does not go into effect until 2018. And then, instead of just having genetically modified or made with genetic modification on the label, it's not going to have that. It's going to have one of those square boxes with the squiggles in them. I'm sure one of you know what that's called, but I actually don't even know what it's called. But I'm sure many of you people do know what it's called. And you take that black box and put your phone and scan it. And that then takes you to a website, which you will have to log into. And there you will find out, lo and behold, if that product you're thinking of buying after all of that is genetically modified or not. So it's very hidden. It's very controlled, and also by having that term that it has to be the DNA which has been changed. Well, now, since that law was passed in 2016 and will go into effect in 2018, now the entire game plan for genetic modification has changed, okay? Monsanto is being purchased by Bayer, much larger. That is who's going to own all our food technology. The more you look into that, the less healthy it looks. And the advances in molecular biology have led to 2 new methods for transforming the genetic makeup of crop plants. These are known as RNAi and CRISPR. RNAi is ribonucleic acid interference. So if those of you who are technically savvy can understand the difference between DNA and RNA, for some of you it might be new, but you can understand that since the labeling law convoluted and almost useless as it is anyway, refers only to those plants that have a DNA change. This whole new method called RNA, which is RNA interference, is a process used by cells to turn off a gene code for a specific protein. So those kinds of new technological advances in genetic modification, which is now RNA, is not dealt with under that labeling law, because by definition they put in that DNA language, which immediately excludes and exempts all the newer genetic modified crops, which are using different technologies, such as the ribonucleic acid interference, or another one, it's called CRISPR. Well, CRISPR is a great name because you might think that, these foods will be CRISPR to eat. Well, perhaps they will be CRISPR, but one thing is they certainly may not be something you choose to eat, yet they will forever remain unlabeled, since they changed the definition of labeling to only be linked to DNA, not these other kinds of mutations and changes. So that's the two new ones, and they are on the market as well. One came out just about a week ago, and that's called Arctic apples. And another one is called innate potatoes. Notice these beautiful names, the Arctic apple. Now, many consumers and environmental groups oppose the use of the Arctic apple and the innate potato, as well as all genetically modified crops. For one thing, they have a much higher residue of toxic pesticides and may have unknown health risks associated with these untested genetic alterations. As a matter of fact, we have no idea. And again, they're being claimed to be substantially equivalent and therefore puts them outside of the realm of any kind of testing before they are thrown on the market. What these things are known to do in terms of the Arctic apples is that they silence the genes that make apples turn brown. When you slice an apple and then after a little while it turns brown on the side? Well, they say these Arctic apples are so wonderful because they have changed that gene so that they will no longer turn brown. Okay? So just to remind you that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com. And today we are talking about GMO 2.0, the new kind of genetic modification. So you may want to watch out on your food shelves for these things that are called Arctic apple and innate potato. And if you think that they're better to eat, be my guest. I will be avoiding them. Why? Because they definitely have a much higher residue of toxic pesticides, including, as we discussed earlier, Roundup and now one of the components of Agent Orange. Personally, I would choose to not consume that. But you go ahead and do what you'd like. But you at least have been warned that when you see something that sounds so, sexy and appealing as an Arctic apple, must be so fresh and clean and crisp. Well, yes, and it is loaded with pesticides, it is untested, and it has a completely different genetic expression than a usual apple because of gene silencing. The apple was engineered to produce a double-stranded RNA molecule that inhibits the apple's ability to produce polyphenol oxidase, which is the enzyme that causes an apple to turn brown. So if you think that's a good idea, go ahead and gobble them up. They're definitely legal, they're definitely on the market, and they're being promoted. And where does our government stand on all this? Well, there is a full compendium called Free to Prosper. This is a pro-growth agenda for the 115th Congress, which is what is in there now, and it was put together by a man named Myron Ebell. And this is what they're hoping to do, to protect consumer freedom by ensuring access to genetically engineered foods. And they feel that if it's unlabeled, that will be more likely to ensure access because you won't choose not to buy them since you won't know. Okay? To me, that does not sound like a good idea. In addition, Free to Prosper shouts out the fact that that the government should protect consumer food choice by opposing FDA overregulation of food additives. Okay. They also are calling for the repeal of the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard. I just read you what that National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard is about. It's about having that little black box on packaging so you can somehow determine through going through all kinds of convolutions whether or not something is genetically modified, and it will only work if it's a DNA old-fashioned technology. Well, this Free to Prosper would like them to completely eliminate and stop that labeling process before it even goes into effect, which would be 2018 when it is supposed to go into effect. They want to monitor the implementation of the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard to assure that the USDA rule provides for the greatest amount of flexibility and the lowest burden for producers. The lowest burden for producers. There is no language for the highest health for the consumer. Not interested. Couldn't care less. Simply about the people who are manufacturing these frankenfoods, making sure that these are available widely and not labeled. That is the entire agenda. So right now they are laying the groundwork for repealing the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard by codifying the FDA's labeling policy for food products. So that's what's going on. If you like that idea, fine, but perhaps you didn't even know about it. Also, there's a wonderful website that is completely free and available to use, and it's called Syn BioWatch. That's SYN, like for the word synthetic, SYN BioWatch, synbiowatch.org. And it's a database, a completely free database. It's called database.synbiowatch.org. And this is a place where you can look up the many GMOs that are being produced through the new technology that will never have to be labeled, that are already flooding the marketplace. And by the way, that includes the natural product marketplace and the supplement marketplace. For instance, many items that are used in vitamin pills and vitamin supplements. Let's talk about one you might have heard of, spirulina. Spirulina, which is a blue-green algae, some people take it as a supplement to have more green juice, is already being created as a GMO 2.0. You would never know it. It will never be labeled. So you can look that up yourself at synbiowatch.org. Well, this show is just to raise the consciousness of those of you who are interested in being educated healthcare consumers and who would like to know about the newest technology, as well as things that are sort of being they're trying to cover your site about many of these issues. So I thought I would bring it forth today. And I want to thank you for tuning in to Herbally Yours, which is produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. For further information, you can email whpc.ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at www.naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.